But duality to what? That's my point. Is duality? You have to see duality. Like,
no, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but it still didn't. Like, I still got that from this movie. And you're a mook. You're a mook.
Confessions of a Film Poser.
Welcome back to Confessions of a Film Poser, the only show where we confess that we've been lying about seeing classic movies, but now we're actually going to watch them, one movie at a time. I'm Eli.
Hey, and I'm Vince. This week's movie confession is Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets from 1973.
Will we love it? Will we hate it? Will we get dragged into someone's terrible life choices after watching this movie?
I already have. Thanks, Eli, but let's watch this movie anyways.
You got it, Vince. Now why don't you tell the fine people why you've never seen Mean Streets?
I kind of have a weird reason for never seeing this movie. My dad was a huge fan of Goodfellas. He still is. And he said, why would you watch another Scorsese film when you can just watch the good one? What about you?
Apparently your dad and I are just huge Martin Scorsese posers, because that's kind of the same reason that I've never seen Mean Streets. Every time I want to watch a Scorsese movie, there's three that I pull from. Goodfellas, Casino, and The Irishman. Yeah, I said The Irishman.
What, The Irishman? What are you, 7?
Mean Streets was released in 1973, directed by Martin Scorsese, and stars Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro. The film pulls from Scorsese's own upbringing in New York's Little Italy, giving it a raw, lived-in feel. At its core, it's about guilt, loyalty, and trying to balance faith with street life. This was one of Scorsese's early breakout films. Handheld cameras, fast editing, rock music of course, and characters that feel messy and real. It also kicked off his legendary collaboration with De Niro, whose performance here is chaotic and impossible to ignore. It wasn't a big hit at first, but over time, it became a defining film of the new Hollywood era of the 1970s and a blueprint for modern crime movies. Look, if I know anything about Scorsese movies, and I do because I watch the same 3 Scorsese movies over and over again, there's going to be a killer Scorsese walkthrough tracking shot. There's going to be awesome needle drops. Robert De Niro is going to be actually trying, and you're going to end up rooting for somebody that you have no business rooting for, that's an awful person, but you still want them to win in the end. Kind of like you, Vince.
Hey, what am I, a clown to you? All right, dude, my prediction for this movie is that they're going to be going and robbing banks so that they can pay for sex changes for people that they're sleeping with, dude.
That's Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, okay. There's going to be gangsters.
We're going to pass it over to future Vince and Eli, who are going to tell us everything they thought and felt and react to Mean Streets after watching it. But before we do that, thank you so much for watching the video this far. If you're new here, hit subscribe, hit like. Confess what movies you've been lying about in the comments. You know what? Maybe we'll watch them with you. Maybe we'll join you on your path to movie redemption. And without further ado, Vince, can you pass it on over to future Vince and Eli?
Dad, I'm sorry. I'm going to break the rule. I'm going to watch another Scorsese film without you.
Vince, be a man!
What's a mook?
A mook? What's a mook?
I don't know.
What's a mook?
I give you a mook.
Hey, Vince, I got a question for you, buddy.
Yeah, what's up, dude?
What's a mook?
I don't know.
All right, well, Webster's dictionary describes it as as slang for an incompetent, foolish person. So I'm going to start out the show by saying, hey, you mook.
Dude, I'm a mook.
Hey, dude, we're back after watching Mean Streets for the first time. One of Martin Scorsese's first movies. And let's not make people wait. What did you think about Mean Streets, dude?
I loved it, man. I saw it on Monday after we recorded, and then I think you kind of split it up. And I've been wanting to text you so bad about this movie, and I've been doing my best not to, but I absolutely loved this movie. I went into it thinking it was his first movie. I guess technically it's his third movie, but it's his like first movie in this genre that we know him as. So what did you think of it?
Yeah, it's the movie that kind of put him on the map, and I did not love this movie, dude.
Really?
It's complicated. It's complicated for me, but in a vacuum, I liked this movie. In the filmography of Martin Scorsese, which I've already been spoiled because I've already seen a majority of his movies. I joked a little bit at the beginning and said I only watched 3. Those are the 3 predominant movies that 3 movies that I predominantly watch of his. But I've seen a number of his movies. I've seen Silence. I've seen Gangs of New York. Wolf of Wall Street, of course. this is the movie to get to those movies, and I just thought it was like meandering.
That's good, dude. I'm blindsided by this because I thought you were gonna love this one as much as I did. So I'm down to break down why I loved it and why you're wrong, you mook.
Look, all for the mook hat. Yeah, it's not like I didn't love this movie, like this movie as a whole. I thought there was really awesome technical aspects of this movie that I'll try to like describe without sounding too much like a poser, even though I am, so I'm gonna end up sounding like it. But there was performances, there's some cinematography, the editing, and some sequences that I really enjoyed and I thought were really good. But it felt like Martin Scorsese's first or third or very early in his career, which was cool in and of itself. So I'm not knocking it for that,
dude. So we've already gone over it. I love his other movies. I love Goodfellas, Casino, the other ones. But sticking to like the mobster genre, my favorite part of those movies is always the antics that like the lower level guys get into, and they just like fight each other and just kind of squabble and always like make up at the end of it. And this movie is entirely that. So it was so cool that like my favorite parts of those movies had a movie that existed that I had no idea about. I feel like this whole movie is based off of not like the typically in mobster movies, it follows like someone that's going to be a made man or someone that is a made man. And this one's just kind of about the people below those people and their story. And this movie doesn't have like a linear storytelling mechanism. Like it's kind of just follows these guys, and it feels like you're following these guys through New York during the early 70s, which is nuts because it is that. But I thought it was so good. And I loved so many aspects of this movie. I love the music. I love all the actors. Probably my favorite Robert De Niro role I've ever seen him in. He was just unhinged, and I didn't know what to expect the entire time. And my first note, the second I saw him, was like, Robert De Niro is a fucking badass in this movie, dude. Unhinged, but he's a fucking badass.
Yeah, and I think all of those things that you mentioned are ultimately what I didn't like about the movie, because while I liked the movie and I like segments of the movie, I didn't find this movie to be super entertaining. I found it to be, like I said, mentioned before, it was kind of meandering, and I felt like the interesting story was Robert De Niro, and I didn't find Harvey Keitel, while he gave a good performance, I just felt like every time De Niro was on screen, I wanted more from De Niro's character, and I wanted to know more about Johnny Boy, and they imply that he was beat up by the cops, and it kind of set him back a bit and kind of knocked him down a peg mentally. And that's super compelling to me. I didn't really care for, they were trying to have this overarching narrative or, sophistication about the character that he's fragmented due to his religious beliefs, but I didn't feel like that played a part enough to really matter. And I didn't know who these people were and why. I mean, I knew that they were like buddies and they were like a street gang, and yeah, they were the lower level guys. But for a movie named Mean Streets, I didn't feel like the streets were all that mean.
I feel like the streets were mean in the sense of like the early 70s. Like it's not like if you go to Detroit or whatever nowadays where you just get murdered and no one talks to you, they just kill you.
Well, I get that. And I get that the 70s were like, a very dark time in terms of crime, but I don't feel like we really saw that. They kept talking about De Niro like he didn't go to work. And I'm sure, that's on purpose. So I just didn't like that selection, but I would have liked to see what De Niro was supposed to be doing and what work he was avoiding. And maybe that was the whole point of his character, is there wasn't that substance to it. But
that's what I feel like. I feel like he's just a person that's just full of mischief. And you didn't need the background story of like what he's doing day to day, because the scenes that he's in are so strong that that exactly what he's doing now is exactly what he did down the street. And he was probably blowing up while he did it.
Well, yeah, I see that, but I disagree with
of his character.
But my argument would be, in order to truly understand and have Harvey Keitel's character be well-rounded, you got to know more about that character of Johnny Boy. And for it to matter that he's so loyal to him to the point of like almost giving up his entire life. And I don't know, like the way it ended, he could be dead. But from what we saw, like what he gave up and what he was willing to risk, what his uncle told him, like stay away from him, stay away from his cousin. And he didn't do that, and he was loyal when everybody else kind of gave up on this dude. I feel like you do need to know more about Robert De Niro's character to make me care about, about Charlie more. And
Why
I just
Charlie cares, yeah.
And I didn't get that. Like, I didn't get that, from the story. And that's the part of me that I just couldn't sink my teeth into. And that's why, it was just kind of meandering. There was a lot of scenes. I'm sure when this came out in 1973, it looked nothing like what was coming out at that time. And I could see how this movie propelled Martin Scorsese. And there is a cool edge. The cinematography, like I said, is great. And hopefully we'll get into a little bit of those moments that we loved from this movie. But I just thought on the whole, the 2 hours or the hour and 52 minutes of this, it just didn't make for like an overall satisfying movie. Like I said, cool stylistic points in certain areas, but it wasn't well rounded for me. And me, like, so much of it to me comes down to the characters, and I just didn't really care about Charlie all that much. And I didn't see how, like the tagline is go to church on Sunday, go to hell on Monday. I just like, there was the opening scene of him in the church, and there was references and his kind of inner monologue, which I think was Martin Scorsese talking.
Yeah.
His inner monologue were like acted as prayers, right? And there's the one where he's driving to the car and he says a prayer out loud and he gets made fun of for it. But I just didn't know, like, he feels so bad, but I'm like, what does he feel bad about? Like, what's he doing? He runs this restaurant, this bar, and like covers for his friends, but we didn't see him do anything that was, we didn't see him commit crime. We didn't see a kind of balance of power. We just saw him interacting with his friends, I felt like, for an hour and 52 minutes.
Yeah, which is funny because that's the stuff that I liked. But I feel like that goes with the fact that these are lower level guys that like are pretty much there to like do errands, and like they have their own squabbles and they have their own debts that they have to pay the lower level guys.
Hold on, can I pause you real quick?
I do want to contest what you said though about my
contest all you want. My question to you is lower level to what?
To his uncle Giovanni.
But who was his uncle? What is his uncle? Was he a part of a faction?
Dude.
Was he La Cosa Nostra? Did he?
It's something that you are aware that happens, but it's never spelled out.
Yeah, I mean, hang all that, dude. Like, I don't.
Yeah, but I like it. I don't want something like spelled out for me. My contention for your story plot on Charlie is that I feel like they played into it perfectly, where he's like having these questions about like, is he a good person? Is he going to go to heaven? He knows that what he does, even though the movie doesn't show like the terrible aspects of what him and his family does.
Yeah, the most important part of what you need.
Yeah, but the struggle is like he knows that he's doing bad things, and he doesn't feel like he's worthy of going to heaven. So he like tests the flames of the like literal flames in this movie to see what hell would feel like. But then like not even thinking about it, he's doing everything possible to befriend this guy that no one likes and no one should be friends with, and try to save him every single time that he makes a mistake. And then he also falls in love with this woman that is also has her own mental problems, as the uncle says, which she just has epilepsy, which shows you how old this movie is and like how old the thinking was. But I feel like he's a saint in the way that he goes about his ordinary life. And I feel like I wonder how much of that is him trying to cope with the terrible things that he's doing. So it's like the duality of his faith and his lifestyle. And I loved that.
But duality to what? That's my point. Is duality? Like,
yeah,
you have to see duality. Like, you
no,
can't,
I understand. I understand what you're saying, but it still didn't. Like, I still got that from this movie. And you're a mook. You're a mook. So you don't understand simplistic storytelling.
Yeah, but I also think like you like this movie because you were.
This movie's not
you
simplistic.
Should like this movie, dude. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
not at all.
Your opinion of this movie is based on 50 some odd years of people being like Mean Streets, Scorsese.
I've never heard anyone talk about this movie, dude.
Oh, get out of town!
I
dude.
haven't.
You've never heard anybody talk about Mean Streets.
No, dude.
I
even
church
told
the other
people
day
at
and they were
work about
talking
it.
about Mean Streets. Okay,
No.
I was at my kid's school. She's in kindergarten. They were like, "Hey, remember in Mean Streets when De Niro was on the roof firing a gun off the lady's window?" I hate
your
that
kids
lady.
out of that school, dude.
Dude, no, I was like, "Oh, cool! I gotta watch this." Vince, we gotta get Mean Streets.
I'll add it to the list. Thanks, Tina.
Oh, have you seen our YouTube channel? Yeah, I just like we could like argue this into the ground, and this is
I could do it all day.
This is what makes film. I mean, you just keep arguing the same point of like, Yeah, the
Why I
information
liked it?
wasn't in there, but I still liked it.
Okay.
Shut up, you should too.
Let me say, the very end of all of this is it brought a tear to my eye to see how Italians felt and like were like proud of their nature back in New York in 1970s, and that's gone, dude. So
but that's all Scorsese. That's my point. Is like you get that in. So you get that. That is like so rich in Goodfellas. That's so rich in Casino.
And then I have another outlet to see a different story being told with that same lens that I never knew about because no one ever told me about this movie, dude.
But
I
it's
don't
a
go to the
counterfeit.
kindergarten that your daughter goes to. The kids don't tell me about these things, dude.
The lens that you're looking through it is a counterfeit Japanese adapter. It's not even a real lens, dude. So I talked about some of the stuff I didn't. Let's talk about the stuff and the sequences or the performances that we did like, and I'll tell you what I did like about this movie.
All right, you go first because right now I'm really upset.
Well, in my predictions, I said that I wanted the Tarantino walkthrough tracking shot. We got that. It was a little bit different in this one. But Robert De Niro's entrance to this movie, and yes, I agree with you. Robert De Niro's with the mod shag haircut,
dude,
is so scary, and he's so good in this, and he's so magnetic. But his intro to the movie, that long panning shot down the bar where he's coming in, and then like the reverse on Harvey Keitel, and their relationship is great. Their relationship makes up for a little bit of what is lacking in kind of the meat and potatoes of who they are to each other. But some of the shots in this movie were absolutely glorious, and they were so like the cinematography, like when they're in the bar and they have like the red key light like on their faces, and all the other like outside of that light is just like kind of dark shadows. The scene towards the end before the standoff between Johnny Boy where he pulls the gun on Michael, that sequence was amazing. And that interaction where Michael's kind of in the punching bag, the guy who wants to be the Don, and he's just like, everybody's like, get out of here, you suck. Like, you know, and Johnny Boy has that thing where De Niro, and he just delivers it so great where he's like, I owe everybody money, but I keep coming back to you because I know I don't have to pay you. Dude. Right? Which ultimately ends up being presumably like the thing that kills him. But right before that, when they're sitting in the bar and De Niro's on the bar seat and he's just swirling around, and the framing, the over the shoulder shot down the bar, the curved bar, the frame within a frame. And that's the stuff with Scorsese that like, it was cool, you know. So on the flip side of, like I said, I like this movie in a vacuum, right? I don't love it in the big picture of the filmography of Martin Scorsese, but I will say it's really cool to almost see the early like student film, which is not a student film, it's much better than that, but just go with me here. It's cool to see the genesis of the Scorsese gangster movie, and that's really kind of what this movie is. And for that, I dug it. But that was one of my favorite. Anything in the bar was awesome. The when he's drunk, when Harvey Keitel's drunk, and they have the close-up cam, that was so good.
That was going to be my favorite scene, and I looked it up. Do you know what that is called?
No.
It is called a snorri cam, and it was used for the drunk scene. And I think this is one of the first movies that ever did it. There's like one or two other ones within this time frame when movies were being made, and they were like struggling with being able to pay for this movie. So a lot of the lighting is just natural light. So whenever they're walking outside and it's all dark and like kind of out of focus and all you see is like street lights and neon, that was because they couldn't afford like a grip to follow them. But then also they use these techniques like the handheld and then also the snorri cam for the drunk scene. And I absolutely loved it. And that's kind of like the split diopter that we found before, that this is something that I'm going to look through other movies and be like, oh, I know what that is. And I'm excited.
And then the other thing that I love about Scorsese movies in general, but I loved it in this one because it was really like you threw some dirt on it, was just the out of continuity quick cuts editing. And, you know, just the way that really gets you into the psychology of the character, especially around Robert De Niro. The scene where they're slapping each other up, you know, when they're on the stairwell and it's kind of the final descent into madness. I thought that was so cool. And they were really slapping each other, right? And I know like De Niro's a method guy, so it was cool to see him in his element. You know, these days you kind of get De Niro movies. I really loved him in Killers of the Flower Moon, but he's not doing what he's doing in this movie. And also what I wanted to say earlier was, you know, I wanted to know more about the Jackie character, but that might be the taxi driver. Like that's still That's still not a movie that I've seen. I still haven't seen Taxi Driver, so that's on the list for sure. But I get the sense that that is kind of the same vein or the same family tree of characters for De Niro.
Yeah.
But what did you think about the editing? Like the editing in the handheld was dope too.
Yeah, the way that this movie was filmed was so good, and like you said, it's like the genesis of this director style that we know of because we love all these other movies. The editing, I looked it up, and I guess him and someone else edited it, but they aren't in the editing guild, so they had to like befriend this woman that signed on. I think it was a woman, or it was a guy with a woman's name. It's like Leslie or something. But they had to sign on his name in the production just so that they can get it passed, because technically they didn't even have the right to edit their own film.
They were scabs.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. A lot of I was watching stuff today about this movie, and a lot of the budgetary stuff they had, and it helped almost produce a better movie because they had to like do things on their own. They had to build rigs. They had to make lighting work, and you can feel it in the movie for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's like really the strength, like the strong points of this movie were those moments. Absolutely. Yeah. And it wasn't this perfectly polished thing, and I really like that. You know, I like that about this movie. And you still get that up to like Goodfellas. You know, there's scenes where the cut is weird, or Casino where the cut is out of continuity. And it's such a like risky thing to do, but I felt like, you know, anybody can pull it off at Scorsese. It was cool to see here. It was cool to see young Scorsese, and I believe Scorsese's mom was in it as well, because I think she showed up in a lot of his early movies.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I think she's the woman in the stairwell that when she's having her epileptic fit that comes and like helps her. I think that's Scorsese's mom.
Which that wrong. Scene pissed me off that he left her, dude. Like
dude, that's what I'm saying.
This
like,
woman,
right? And it, like again, it wasn't. They weren't mean streets. They were just like, you know, unnice streets. I don't know. It just
that's pretty mean, dude.
That mean. Yeah, I don't know. It's not the mean streets. It's the meandering streets, dude. We're gonna drift outside, and I understand it's in like an artistic expression. And again, if you're in 1973 sitting in a movie house, you're probably like, "What? Who is this guy?" You know, this is that dude. I get it, and he became an all-time goat, but. This wasn't my favorite. The needle drops are great. As per usual. There's the Rolling Stones, Jumpin' Jack Flash, in that intro with De Niro. I would just turn this movie on just for De Niro's entrance again.
And that was the Mook review by Eli.
Confessions of a Mook, a film Mook. Yeah.
A film Mook, dude. I loved the fact that their pastime was going to the movies in New York in the 70s. I felt like that was pretty cool. There's a specific scene where Johnny Boy and Charlie are running from the cops, and they go to the graveyard, and it's towards the end of the movie, and Johnny Boy lays down on the grave, and it kind of like signifies like what is about to happen. I'm sure you didn't catch that because you were too busy on your phone because you hated this movie.
You're so bitter.
And there's also my favorite line of the movie, which is like nothing special, but it just spoke to me. Charlie's talking to his girl, and she's asking him just about himself, and he's trying to open up. Oh, she asked him, like, you're a city boy, like, you've never been out of New York. Would you ever even want to go somewhere else and, like, leave all of this? And he says, you know, there are no mountains in Manhattan, but tall buildings are the same thing. And in his mind, like, the city landscape is the nature that he grew up in, and I thought it was so good, dude. And I know you're going to it all over that, dude. So give me your Mook take on that line.
No, that was a great line. There was a lot of great lines. That was a great moment. That sequence in the cemetery was great. I noticed him laying down on the grave and thought that was foreshadowing. I noticed did you notice the detail that he put a handkerchief down on the tomb before he sat down?
But then it pissed me off because he did that and then he laid down on the rest.
Yeah. So he's like showing respect, but he was also like, whatever, they're dead. What do they know?
Is a Johnny Boy thing to do, dude.
Yeah, it was definitely a Johnny Boy movie. Yeah. The thing I didn't understand, and maybe, you know what, I'm willing to concede that maybe there's symbolism in this movie that I just missed, right? But at the end of that scene where he's looking at through the window and they're having the party and there's just this woman screaming, what are we supposed to take away from that?
I think that's just a New York thing, dude.
Yeah,
I watched one interview with Martin Scorsese talking about the music of this movie and the surrounding background. And he said, like, when you grew up in New York at this time, it was never quiet. There was always sounds. There was always music playing. Once one apartment would stop playing music, the next apartment would. And if there's no music going, there's just constant trucks or screaming. So it's like, it makes sense, dude.
Yeah, and I know that this is kind of close to home for Martin Scorsese, and I think it was, it was described as stuff that he lived through, right? So maybe my problems with the movie are just more of a personal, passive kind of relationship that he has to it in telling the story because it happened to him.
What did you think of the fight scene in the pool hall? I feel like that was probably one of the coolest scenes that had nothing to do with the storyline, which again, this movie, it doesn't really have a running storyline, but that whole scene, it's like 3.5 minutes. And I thought it was so funny. I thought that it was funny that they like started a fight, had a full on brawl, and then kind of ended it. Like, okay, yeah, I'll give you your money. And then it just ends into them fighting again once they get the money and then they run off. I thought it was so funny, dude.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was interesting in that it was almost describing these, because again, we don't know what they're talking about. We don't know what they're saying. Oh, I'm going to pay you the money. Like, we don't really know the details of it. So that, like, I always get caught up in that. I'm like, well, what am I missing? But it almost describes like this brotherhood, right, on the street. And it's like these people fight, and then they love each other, and they fight again, and then they love each other, and then the cop comes in and he pays off the cop. He's like, this is my cousin, and so there's like that camaraderie that is kind of ever present in Tarantino movies, and I really did like that. It was like almost like a bonding experience. Yeah,
totally.
This isn't a mobster movie though. I think
it isn't. But
I think that's where I run into this movie.
I feel like that scene alone shows like an answer to what you're saying and like what are they actually doing. I feel like they just run around and do the errands of the big guys. So I imagine they go to that pool hall to collect the money that has to go back to his uncle, and that's why they fight over it, but then the guy still pays him because he still knows he has to pay his debts, unlike Johnny Boy.
Yeah, I got all that.
But that's also me looking into it. So
well, I don't know. I think it's right there, and I didn't miss that point. I don't feel like that makes her an overall satisfying viewing, or an overall, like, as the movie on the whole, right? And I'm not talking about little moments or little symbolic things or character moments or cinematography or anything else like that. I'm talking about when you look at the movie on the whole. I just don't think like I wouldn't put this one up there in the Scorsese filmography. Doesn't mean I hated it. I mean, there's other Scorsese movies I like far less. But now that I think about it, I can't really think of any. So yeah.
And I'm just breaking your balls, dude. I'm
breaking your balls, you mook.
I'm breaking your balls, you mook. We have to have a mook counter on here.
Mook off.
But I do have to say, like, from what you said, it makes sense, and I can see why this movie wouldn't be for everyone. But personally, I did enjoy it. And also, I feel like we're arguing a lot, dude. So we need to do something right now to bring us back together. And I want you to take the lead because you took the lead in squandering our friendship. So I'm ready.
I just Venmo'd you $10.
Oh, dude, we're back.
We have a rating system here on Confessions of a Film Poser. Would you buy the movie? Would you buy it? Would you spend your hard-earned cash and add it to your collection? Would you stream the movie? Would you watch it if it was on a streaming platform that you already pay for? Or would you watch this movie on TV? Would you not waste your time seeking it out on streaming? You wouldn't buy it. But if it happened to be on TV on a Saturday and you're on the couch and you're hungover, then you throw it on and go, yeah, I'll watch this movie. So Vince, obviously you already bought it, and it sounds like you're happy with that purchase.
And my review reflects that. I would suggest buying this movie if you're a fan of the other Scorsese movies, even if you're not and you're just interested in a cool old classic movie that I thought the music and visually was stunning, buy this movie.
Yeah, I would buy this movie. I think this movie would be good to have in your collection. And, of course, with the other Martin Scorsese movies and the kind of the lineage of such a master of the art. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. We'll check one more movie off the box, and we're on a journey to not be posers. We're not there. We might never get there, but we're closer. So I thank you for coming along on the ride. Vince, thanks for watching Mean Streets with me, dude.
Yeah, dude, thank you for bringing this to my attention.
No problem. And I want to bring up really quick before we go, Vince has never seen the Godfather trilogy. So the next 3 weeks, we're going to be watching all three of the Godfather movies. I just picked it up on 4K Blu-ray. Vince picked it up on 4K Blu-ray. So come back and watch a young man, a young boy, a young Italian boy who's never seen Godfather watch as his flower unfolds and he opens himself up to the world of Marlon Brando and young Al Pacino and the Corleone family and Francis Ford Coppola. And with that, we'll see you next week for Godfather Part 1. Thanks, Vince. Bye.
All right, dude.
Mook.
Confessions of a Film Poser.